Welcome to the program today. My name is Mondo Gonzales here with Doug Woodward, and we have a great program for you. We are going to be talking about really a very fascinating topic. But before we go there, I want to remind everybody that you can find us in other places. We certainly have broadened our footprint out in the social media aspect, and we have a lot of other content that appears on our YouTube channel. We're also certainly on Roku. You can find us on our Prophecy Watchers app, which you can find on your phone. You can go to prophecywatchers.com, which is our website there, and you can get access to the other places. We're on Rumble. So we have really broadened what we're doing because there's a lot of other content that we have that appears on far more than just our television outreach. And so things are happening on a day-by-day, moment-by-moment basis, and so we're always trying to stay up to speed on some of the things. So I just encourage you to check out our other places. But Doug, welcome.
Thank you so much. I just have a great time being with you. It's a super opportunity. Thank you.
Now, we've been discussing one of your other books here, but today we want to talk about, we have this situation. I think most prophecy teachers today, the Russian invasion of Ukraine is not Ezekiel 38, 39. I don't think anybody's saying that it is. However, there's conditioning that goes on. Again, even the last couple of years that we've been watching with the passports and the health passports. None of those are on the mark of the beast, but it's part of the conditioning. So when we see this war that's going on, this invasion of Russia stepping out, regardless of the reasons, I don't want to get into all that.
Right.
But coming in, what's your take? Give us just think out loud here. What's your thoughts on all this?
Certainly, I think that, this is the revenge of Putin against the West for all kinds of issues. I mean, he's been trying to plead with the West for a couple of decades. I don't want Ukraine in NATO. And, we think, well, why can't Ukraine be in NATO? Well, of course, it's essentially because it's like parking, our missiles right up against Moscow, because Ukraine, easy. I mean, it's right there.
It's right there.
And so the Russians, Soviet Union, used to have a very large buffer. But now that buffer is very thin. Basically Belarus and, and in the south, you could say, well, Iran, but you really don't have much other than that as a buffer. So they want Ukraine to be a buffer.
You think about the potential hypocrisy that we might have because in the sense of what's the distance between Cuba and Washington, D.C. and Ukraine and Moscow. I mean, the whole Cuban Missile Crisis of the 60s was exactly the same thing. We said it will not happen. So Putin is not wrong in having the same thinking.
Right. Well, I think that he was probably hopeful that he could get his way with a lot less destruction. And a lot less killing. I think that he wanted to say, look, I'm willing to go to war if I can't get you all to slow down this whole discussion of Ukraine going into NATO. And of course, the United States could have taken the position for neutrality, for the Ukraine to stay
far earlier
neutral.
In the conversation,
Yeah, like 2 or 3 years ago. So to some extent, Putin is reacting to our refusal to negotiate. And we, of course, I think it was George H.W. Bush that basically made the promise that, if you'll go back and kind of lay on your mat, we're not going to cause all of like Ukraine and Georgia and all these other little lands right next to Russia. We're not going to put them all in NATO. Well, we lied. And so
the Baltics, right?
Yeah, the Baltics, and of course, the Estonia, Lithuania, all those nations. So you have the Baltic states, and then you have the Balkans. All right, so you have the Baltics and the Balkans, and so that's kind of where Putin has been. And then, of course, he does believe he's a Russian nationalist. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, we're not, just so we understand, we're not sympathizers of Putin here.
No, we're not.
We're just trying to get into his mind of why he would do such a thing.
That's all we're trying to say. Why is he doing this? Right? Now, unfortunately for the people of Ukraine, and I think ultimately for the people of the world, where this is going. All right, now the question is, all right, is this Gog and Magog? No, because there's a very specific scenario that the Bible talks about in terms of Ezekiel 38, 39, and we understand that Iran, probably Turkey, whatever Iraq is able to muster, right? Ethiopia, probably not Egypt, right? Not probably not Libya.
Mitzrayim's not mentioned. Egypt.
Probably not. Yeah, and so it would look like that those countries have to be firmly allied with Russia. I believe it's Russia. Now, the other views, like the Islamic Antichrist views, is predominantly Turkey and Saudi Arabia. Which aren't the best of friends anyway. So that's kind of another issue. But that scenario sort of has to be in place. And so from that standpoint, it doesn't appear that we're there yet, as Bart Simpson would say. We're not there yet, right? But how could we get there? And how could we get there in a hurry? Well, I write about in this book, which I don't know if you're going to talk about that or not, but
talk
that
about
book, I wrote a book called "Is Russia Destined to Nuke the USA?" And so it's sort of an analysis. These books are an analysis of what's going on geopolitically, militarily, and what is the likelihood that the next great war is not perhaps what's known as the Psalm 83 war, but it may in fact be Gog and Magog. And that's what I believe it will be. Now, the Islamic Antichrist theory sort of collapses all those wars into one war and puts it at the very end of the tribulation period.
Armageddon scenario kind of?
Yeah. But I believe that Gog and Magog will happen before Daniel's 70th week. I'm not one that sees it happening 30 or 40 years before. There were a number of scholars that tend to see it happening perhaps 2 to 3 years before the 70th week. And it may happen in concert with the rapture. And so that is another possibility. And so that's kind of where I come out on this and talk about that, and then talk about why Russia is so well armed. I'm going to get a little drink here.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting when you think about just recently, I've been watching the news, and not only did a few weeks ago Putin make a comment as he was invading Ukraine. He said, "We do not recognize Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights." Well, then, just in the last couple of days, the United Nations, Human Rights Council, which is really irrelevant, it is laughable. And they came out and they specifically said something similar, that they did not recognize Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights. Now, that's extremely important. It's for the UN to do it. Yeah, whatever. They're irrelevant.
Right.
But for Putin to say it, especially as he's been cooperating with Israel so much,
a little bit of a change of tune.
That's kind of a big deal.
Yeah, I think it is. And so I think that, again, the steps could fall into place or could occur very quickly. The thing I worry about, and this is kind of my fear, having written the things I've written, making note of the sophistication of not just Russia's mobilized missiles, but also their defense. The S-400, but the S-500 is now beginning to roll off the line. And these are defensive anti-missiles that could make it...
And anti-aircraft, too, yeah.
Yeah, and anti-aircraft. Yeah. That could make it almost impossible for us to penetrate Russian space with our missiles. And so if you have a, let's say, flawless defense, then that's going to make you think, okay, now I can exercise my offense. And so I do worry that the United States that we are facing very likely a nuclear conflict. And certainly since the control now that militaries have over being able to sort of dial down or dial up the the megatons, the kilotons of the power, it tends to make
precision strikes, basically.
Yeah, they basically say, we know we can now strike within 3 feet of our target or something like that, and we know we can set the power that we want to be more isolated, more directed, and so hey, we can use them now.
Yeah, because you don't have this massive nuclear fallout.
Yeah, you may have some, but you may not have the kind that we talked about back in the Cuban Missile Crisis or
exactly.
thereafter.
Yeah, I mean, you think about the Second World War. So in this sense, let's kind of wrap it up here in the sense of this prophecy update. What do you think are some of the other major topics that we should be, we're prophecy watchers. What should we be watching for?
Well, we've talked about the Great Reset. We've talked about the fact that our money is changing. That's underway. The issue of authoritarianism, China's there. I mean, they are really using the technology to essentially eradicate all personal freedoms. And we're kind of seeing that in the United States as well. And so you're seeing these controls get increasingly detailed and annoying.
Pervasive, yeah.
Right?
Sure.
Pervasive, yeah. And so I think those are the things that are pretty obvious that we should be watching. And I think beyond that, we have to keep an eye on Russia and what's happening there, because that could precipitate a move towards Gog and Magog in probably 6 months or less.
Doug, appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been good being here, and we have been just scratching the surface of this extremely challenging but fun topic. Anyways, we appreciate you watching. Us here at Prophecy Watchers, we just ask for your prayers. If you would really, I think about this, I used to ask people in church that when you pray for dinner at night, if you would include us in your prayers. There's a lot of things that we are working on, and there's a lot of attacks that are coming against the ministry, as you can imagine. But if you would commit to praying for us, that would be so awesome. We would appreciate it from the bottom of our hearts. But we also appreciate you watching today, and we look forward to seeing you next time.